Everybody, today on the show, I have a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Lyndy. I'm going to introduce her here in just 1 second. We're going to cut straight into the interview because that's how we do it. She is a school teacher who is back in the States now, but actually teaches English as a second language or first language, whatever it is. Yeah, as a first language. She teaches it in China, and so she was there when everything started happening in Wuhan. She was in China. Wasn't in Wuhan, but she was in China, and so she kind of has a different perspective, which I think is really fascinating, and it's really new and different, and it's just cool to hear that story. But her origin story of how she got there is also pretty impressive and amazing and tragic and cinematic. And the thing about Lyndy that's so beautiful is, and you'll see throughout the interview, she just has this amazing heart, this beautiful spirit. She's just so passionate about it. There's a moment I get a little choked up and flip off because I flip off the camera because I just couldn't not the middle finger kind of flip off, but switch off the camera, I should say, because it was a emotional moment because she was really hitting home with me personally and stuff I'm dealing with. So hopefully something in this resonates with you. It's a really great, honest, raw conversation. There's no political agenda. I'll flash the card just so you know. It's all part of the same bit. There's no opinion. It's, her opinion, my opinion. We're just having a conversation. There's, again, nothing agendized, no political statements, just two raw conversations. It was and is just a great thing. I can't wait for you to listen to it. Here it is. Here's Lyndy. Thanks again for watching it. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm watching you on Facebook, and I'm seeing what you're kind of. By the way, if I ever look this way, I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at you here. But I've
hear
seen
you anyway.
Yeah, okay, that's right. I've seen you on. You look fantastic, by the way. I've seen you, followed you on Facebook, and then sort of your journey to even get to China is, you know, uh, is a journey, right? I mean, you've been through
Yeah.
some crazy stuff. I'd
Yeah.
love to ask you about it, like how you got to China and set that up. Are you cool with talking about some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
open. I don't care. I have nothing to hide.
The
Good.
catch is, though, your story though is so unique because you're an American citizen that you were there when this outbreak happened. You had to flee to kind of get back or whatever. I don't want to sensationalize anything, but
I
you
get it.
left the country to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I was actually just looking back through my Facebook posts during all of it. Because I don't really remember. Things happened so fast and you get in that fight and flight mode, and it's just next step, next step, next step. I had just returned from the Philippines because we were on Spring Festival break in China. I left my school thinking I was going to be gone for a week and would see my kids and my coworkers and my friends again. And I got back from the Philippines, and before I left for the Philippines, they had already shut down Wuhan. They had already quarantined. It was already a thing, but it wasn't a global thing yet. It was a China thing. And when I got back from the Philippines, I really was paying attention to what was going on. But even when I first got back, I was there February 1st and 2nd. I was reading posts. I wasn't too concerned. I was just like, this sucks. But we were still, like everybody, thinking, it's kind of like the flu, blah, blah. Well, then that day, I went to the grocery store and I got my temperature taken before I entered the building, before I entered the store itself, upon exiting. And I had to wear a mask and I was used to that. But that it just kind of that struck me as like, wow, they're really taking this seriously. And I did have some thoughts about like, what are they not saying? Or, what, like, because I mean, the Chinese government, unfortunately, the people are on an as a need to know basis. They don't have that transparency that the American people expect. So they put a lot of their trust in the government, and they're just like, do what the government says. 100% of the people were wearing masks at that point. Um, but then it started getting global. Then it started expanding, um, and China started talking about shutting everything down. And I just had this picture. I mean, I was even having these, I was sitting in my apartment, not having much to do because I was already, it was home quarantine by then, with the exception of going out, grocery store shopping and everything. But everyone was saying stay at home. I was thinking, they're going to start shutting us down. They're going to start shutting flights down and all of that. When that happened, I immediately was like, I don't want to be stuck here. The school that I work for, I'm an English teacher, and the school I work for said that, my boss was telling me, stay here, it's okay, be cool. And I was like, I kind of want to leave. And just not to be stuck in a place. I have minimal communication. Yes, I live there. And I can communicate for basic needs, but being stuck for 2 weeks and, being isolated, just being an expat in general, I'm just talking. I'm just flowing. Are you
No, no, no.
doing?
I'm listening. I'm making notes. I have questions I can go back to. It's fantastic. I mean, listen, this is
Because I'm a stream of consciousness speaker. You've got to tell me to stop if I'm just
no, no.
rambling.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in. It's all fantastic. Please keep going.
Please do. Okay, good. So, where was I? Excuse me. I Yeah, just sitting at home, and I just had this picture of, what if these people just bust in with hazmat suits, like someone in your compound is sick, sent off to this facility, and I speak no Chinese. I can say hello, thank you, I want a sausage, please. I can very little. I can't ask them what's going on. I can't if I get myself into a situation there. I can't get information, the thorough information that I would want just to know what's going on with me. And so that I can tell my family and friends back home, because, I have a lot of people, just looking out for me and rooting for me. So I wanted to be able, I got to a point where I just wanted to be back here. I wanted to be back with my family, because if I'm going to be stuck anywhere, I wanted to be home.
I totally get
And
it.
my clothes.
Could I ask you real quick? Could we, because that's exactly in the line of it, of coming back to it, but could we talk about how you, just to set up the context of why you were there, I think is kind of crucial. Like, how did you end up in China teaching English? Like what got you to that point? Because I think that'll also set up really well, why coming back would be, that's a big deal too, right? Could you, and why you're even going back again. So could maybe you tell us how'd you end up in China teaching?
Okay, so there is a couple of fronts there. On a human, kind of just what I want out of life front, I've always wanted to live in another country. I wanted to see another way of life, another way of thinking, another perspective. Also, I'm kind of drawn to, just kind of an exotic kind, just live someplace else. I just did. Experience another climate, another, culture. And but I had tried a few different times in my life. It wasn't practical. A few years ago, I lost everything in a flash flood. That made traveling light. And so I didn't have all this furniture and all this whatever. I just had, a few boxes of possessions that were being kept in storage at, a family member's house. And, since the flood, I had been just kind of floating around, being dependent on whoever could support me, because I was having trouble finding a job. I had been laid off. I had been, the flood, I couldn't live where I lived anymore. So it was just all kinds of factors, just living wise, that I was struggling with for years after the flood. Flood happened in 2016. And long story short, I was staying with friends in Louisiana. They had a house with an extra room. I was living rent free and all that. It was allowing me to hold a job that, doesn't I work in administration, so it doesn't and I'm single, so I don't that doesn't afford me a lifestyle, an independent lifestyle these days. So I was depending on my friends. Well, they, as is their prerogative, they, decided to build a house. They weren't going to have room for me, so I had to make a decision within 9 months. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And the main thing was, I was tired of being a dependent person. I'm not afraid to say I'm 40 years old. It's finances have been a struggle my whole life, being single and not having a job that, you know, um, pays enough for me to live on my own. So that's one side of it. Was I had a practical decision to make about how am I going to move forward in my life and try to avoid this situation, try to come up with, a career that I could have, that I could both be satisfied in, and also be able to, afford to live. So when this all came up, I was like, I can go anywhere. I can go anywhere in the world. I have no kids, I have no pets, I have no house, I have no equity. I have nothing here that cannot be moved somewhere, in boxes. Um and So I was on Facebook one night, and I had stressed about this for months. I was on Facebook one night, and I was in a group, just a Facebook group that I'm in. It's a fan group. And I unloaded all of my stress, I mean, I just, because we do that in that group sometimes. I don't know if you're a part of any Facebook groups. They, even fan groups, I think it'd be really cool. You can get deep. I just unloaded all of my my situation. And someone was like, why don't you go, why don't you get a TEFL certificate? TEFL is teaching English as a foreign language, TEFL, and go move somewhere. And it's not like I'd never thought of it before. It just, again, it was something that wasn't practical for me at the time, for whatever reason, in life. So I started looking into it, and I was like, I've had so many people tell me I could be a teacher, that I should be a teacher, and that, blah, blah, blah. So I started looking around, and I came up with China because honestly, I felt the cost of living there is so low, and what they pay, native English, native foreign teachers is so nice that, I could go, and as it stands now, I can tell you, ever since I've been there, I have been, sending half of my money here to pay for student loans and bills and stuff. And I can live very comfortably in China not very comfortably, but I can live comfortably in China on what I make. So that was the practical reason.
Even the
Yeah.
photos I've seen, like, and I have a question about this too, but even the photos I've seen from you, like, I enjoyed watching your journey. Like, I think your journey's fascinating prior
Oh,
to the
that's
pandemic. Seriously, no, I mean, I have gooses talking about it. You can't see him right now, but I'm serious about, because because you're my friend and I've known you for a while, but it was actually someone taking a risk, doing something that wasn't like, oh, woe is me. You were like, I'm not going to drop the F bomb, but F bomb, I'm going over, I'm going to go do it. And you did. And I was like, man, that is incredible. And then watching it, you were like, here's the apartments they gave me to look at. I mean, you were documenting your journey in such a way with such detail that it was amazing to me. And that's one of my questions too, though, is how are you able to, like, I didn't think when I went to China once on a flight and I got stuck. My cell phone didn't work. Nothing worked for me. How are you able to communicate? Because you're able to like interact with all of us on Facebook. How is that? Is it okay over there? Is that considered okay to do and all that kind of stuff?
no, no, but many, many, many people do it. We use a VPN, um, and they know that we do it. It's kind of one of those. It's not okay, but they know that we do it. It's done on such a massive scale. I don't think any way they can really stop it, because whatever they do shut down, something else just pops up. But yeah, just a VPN. Find a good VPN service. There are many out there. Some are free, some you pay for. You get better quality that way. And yeah, but that's how and that's a must. That's an absolute must. It took me a while to get a VPN when I first came to China, and those first before that happened, that was rough, because there's internet there, but you don't know what sites work, what don't. Google doesn't work. I am a Google fanatic. I Google everything. Any thought that pops in my head, I got Google up. And then I knew, Facebook and everything. So as long as I have the VPN, I'm okay. Now, if something goes wrong, and they do sometimes have these sweeps of where the VPNs won't work. And that just, they're just like, oh, the government's doing a sweep. It lasts for a week or two, and then, and then they work again. And during those times, there are other ways you can do. You learn. I learned, all this stuff about how do you know, how do you learn all of that? Google, and I Google everything before I do it, just to try to have some expectation, and of what I'm about to get into. And there's a lot of false information out there, but I joined forums, expat forums. I'm still on many of them. We keep a really tight community, a really tight expat community. They're really cool. We are all very helpful. You can absolutely ignore it for however long you want, and then you have a question, you can't really find it, or you want someone's opinion who's probably personally been through it. That's exactly who you go to. You jump on a forum, you jump in a group. WeChat is the social network that China uses and accepts and is okay with them. You don't need a VPN for that. There are WeChat groups you have to be invited, but then once you're in, information is everywhere. And I mean, you take some with a grain of salt, people that have their own, um, experiences and attitudes and everything like that. You weed through those, use your best judgment, and I have a lot of faith in that community that they're, I mean, I'm talking to them now, just getting, they're strangers, really. They're just virtual people, but we're all going through the same thing. And that's where I'm getting a lot of information about what to expect when I go back to China, which I know we'll get to. And, that's that they're the ones giving me the most, I think, the most dependable updates as to what's happening there, what's happening with my community as as it is the expat community.
What about
How they're
like,
treating us and everything like that.
sure, sure, and that's one of the things too. Is like, I'm in my mind, because again, I wanted to talk to you now that I have this way of doing it. I wanted to talk to you about being over there anyway. What is it? And now, of course, we have other issues to tie into it. But what was it like, though? We grew up in the age of the Cold War and all that stuff, and so like that world was always painted differently. And then once I got into business, I started interacting with people from overseas more. And once I did, I understood it wasn't quite what I had painted in my own head. For you, when you got there, what was it like when I mean, obviously there's language barriers and all that, but removing that, was culturally, did it feel like, as an American, when you landed over, did you feel pretty much like, cool, I'm just in a different place? Or did it feel like, was there a little bit of sense of sort of pressure or anything like that?
Uh, I going back to, I read a lot before I left, and most of the information that we receive, that I'll say, I received, available to me as an American and all of that on the internet and stuff. I was expecting it to be a lot more traditional. Now, keep in mind, my travel in China has been very limited. I've been to Shanghai, I've been to my home, which is about a 25-minute bullet train ride from Shanghai, and it's a city. So I think there are a lot of, more rural places. My boss lives in a village that is, very old village. So it really depends. My experience has been mostly a modern one. My experience, Shanghai is a very modern city. I think it's, one of the most modern cities in the world. And For them, it's kind of like people as usual, business as usual. You just see, it's kind of like being in New York or something like that. The culture shock is real, and it really doesn't set in until, I think, after the vacation time kind of ends in your mind. I got there and I suffered from jet lag for about 2 weeks because it was a 13-hour time difference. And initially, I missed my one of my connecting flights, and so I had a little bit of an issue with that. I was stuck in a Chinese airport. It was a local Chinese airport. Nobody spoke English, and I was very scared. That was a point where I was very scared. I was crying in the airport bathroom, because I couldn't get a hold of anybody. My phone SIM card, the American SIM cards don't work there. You have to buy a Chinese SIM card. But I couldn't get into, because security is identity theft and everything. I couldn't log on using my new phone with my new number and my Chinese SIM card. I couldn't log on to anything. So I was really scared that, just of being in a foreign place with all these people who didn't seem to really want to help. Um, Older people there, a little more leery of foreigners. Um, I think just because they're not used to seeing them all that much. Um, their their culture has changed drastically in one generation, and I'm even going to say 2 generations. It's changed way more. Working at a school and working with kids and seeing the and communicating with parents and communicating with grandparents, I see a huge difference in how they interact with me, how they, just kind of how they view things. the older, generations that are still alive right now, the grandparents, they're still very traditional and very, seem almost skeptical of me. Some of them either treat me with reverence or they just kind of, kind of almost like a skeptical, they just don't, because they don't know me. Now, when I first got there, um, there was so much to get used to, culture, because the way I'm looking at it is humans, we are humans, we're all the same. I guess that's the thing, is I saw more what it's taken me so long to figure that, to come up with this, but like, to me, I really feel like the differences I see aren't as noticeable to me as as the similarities when it comes to American people, Chinese people versus Western society or whatever. It is definitely noticeable that they have grown up in a communist state. They have 100% trust in their government. They do what they're told immediately, without question. And that ties into, their response with the virus. People were, I was telling people while I was still in China when all of this just first started coming out, 100% of the people were wearing masks. Um, and here people still aren't. It's a cultural thing about listening to the government um, and taking care of your community and taking care of your own. That ties into, what I'm saying about foreigners. Older people with foreigners are kind of like, what, they look at you like, what are you doing here, what do you, and none of their mamas never told them not to stare. Staring is big there. If they don't know you, if they want to know more about you, if they're curious, if they want to look at you, they will. And that's a really big thing to get used to there, because here staring is rude, there it's not rude. So there are many cultural differences, and you have to understand that about people, and it really does help, um, being there and being, acknowledging that whenever I have a thought of like, God, because some days I'm just not in the mood to be stared at, and when you're in those first few weeks, those first few months, when the culture shock is really strong, it can get to you. It starts to get in your brain, and you can start feeling paranoid and all of that. And that's just kind of part of the process of leaving. But that's really my biggest takeaway, is that the similarities with us and Chinese people are more noticeable to me than the differences. Having lived there for, I think it's been like 7 or 8 months. Um, I love them to death. I love them to death.
Well, it shows. I mean, it shows in your post. Like it shows with your interaction with the kids, and just again, watching some of the cultural exchanges that you go through. Was it your birthday or somebody's birthday that happened over there? There was something. Do I remember reading something about a birthday party, or was it a wedding? Maybe I'm trying to.
Well, wedding, yeah, but you're probably talking about the wedding.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
and did,
wedding. One of my coworkers, one of the Chinese teachers, had a wedding in October.
right,
Um,
and just
and
seeing your
after,
stories about that was crazy.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, in the similarities and the the differences and everything. I but when you're going there and the culture shock, that was kind of compounded by what it takes to move there and to actually get settled there as a legal resident. That takes, with the paperwork and everything, it takes over a month. And so for that amount of time, I was waiting for, um, I can't, you can't make a bank account. You can't, you pay everything there with your phone. They have an app, Alipay, and you pay everything with your phone. I didn't have that. I didn't have, so I had to make sure I had cash, which I only went with a limited amount because I hadn't been working and I just moved to China. And, so I had a limited amount of cash. Um, I was walking to and from the school, which wasn't a long walk, but it was hot. And, so it's just being really hot, long walks, unfamiliar, not really being able to talk to anyone, aside from my boss and my coworkers, which they're very, very helpful. Just built-in support system that, they've gone above and beyond. I'm really, really grateful for them. They're my family over there. Um, but yeah, just the community, the sense of community there is so different than here. It's just kind of understood, and their public gatherings everywhere there. They're really, really festive people, and community driven people. They're always out and about with each other. So this has taken their toll, this has taken its toll on their mental health too. I think they're just a little more ready, they're just a little more mentally prepared to do what is done. I think we're a little spoiled here.
Yeah, no, that's if we can talk about it some, because again, your perspective on this is like, I haven't seen anybody, and this is why I thought it was fascinating, because I know you're highly intelligent, you're a lovely human being, but on top of it, like your perspective is one that I don't think people are hearing. Obviously there's a lot of terrible crap. It's Facebook, and so there's terrible crap all over Facebook, like with some various awful, sort of racist sort of rants. And I don't think that people ever humanize themselves in that same boat of like, these individuals' lives were upended worse than ours in some cases. Yet, and I'm not saying I'm pro anything here, I'm just making a statement, but for whatever reason, they seemed, as your words, they took it seriously from the beginning. Whereas we still had spring breakers down here at the beach, like not taking it seriously at all. What was it like? What were the moments like when it started happening? And you talked a little bit about it, but when it started happening in Wuhan, what were the moments like before, right before you had to leave? I assume that's when it started peaking. What were those moments like? Was there a sense of fear? I mean, did you pick up on a sense of fear from the people around you, your community?
I did. It was very much in the forefront of their minds. But before I left, it was either a day or two before I left, I feel like. One of my coworkers, the same one that had the wedding, she said, Lyndy, they have closed Wuhan because of the virus. And I said, what do you mean closed? Because we had, kind of been following it. I knew what she was talking about. She said, they closed Wuhan. I said, what do you mean closed? She said, they're not letting anybody in or out of the city. And my first thought, probably everyone who's seen, my first thought was like, oh my God, it's like Outbreak, there. And I just pictured scenes in that movie, and I was just like, oh my God, that was my first fear. That was when I first went, oh, and I think that was probably theirs too. If it hadn't happened before, we didn't talk about it. But that was, not long at all before I went to the Philippines. And when I was at the Philippines, I was there. I wasn't paying attention to anything outside of what I was doing. I just took that as a selfish week. But when I got back, it was a completely different story. Um, it When I got back, that's all anyone was talking about. I couldn't see I couldn't go to school because the school was closed. They had said the school would be closing. They announced in the beginning of February that schools would not reopen on February 5th when they were supposed to reopen after Spring Festival. They were opening on the 17th. So it was delayed. And yeah, so but when I got back, the day after I got back, I went to the grocery store, and that was when they were taking my temperatures and everyone was wearing masks. And that was when measures had already started, coming into just the everyday life. Those measures were already put in place when I got back from the Philippines at the beginning of February. Um, and they were, my boss just kept saying, yeah, just stay home, don't worry about it, just stay home. They were like, keep calm and carry on was their thing. Just, do what they say, stay home, don't panic. They were very pragmatic about it. I didn't hear a lot of fear, outside of the normal, like, my boss had as a newborn, she has,
Wow.
a son as of November. And and she's still, trying to run a school that isn't in right now. But and also try to take care of me. That's part of her job, and she does a very good job of it. But yeah, she was just like, stay home, just. But everything was coming from the government. Every decision made, my boss, every decision made, it was, we need to wait for the government, we need to wait for the government. And they would come out and say, this is happening, this is restricted, don't do this, blah blah blah, until this date. And which may change before before the date
But
comes.
it's But it sounds like
And
though that they were given information though, and some of the things that were over here that's bizarre. And I'm not comparing again. This is not a pro anything video. I, Over here though, sometimes we barely get the information. Like Mobile's still not even testing, right? Or they just did, or barely start. And over there, at least they're conveying information. It seems like they were way more reactive than I think a lot of people understand. I don't think that's been conveyed, at least in, I don't consume a ton of media, but I don't think that's been conveyed. It seems like they reacted very quickly, very effectively.
They did. And that the funny thing about that is I completely agree. And that was one of the reasons that when all of this first started and it was China and they had such an immediate and strong reaction was what made me think, what do they know that we don't?
Right. Right.
What do
Fair
they
enough.
know that they're not telling us is what what do they know that they're not telling us? Because we've got the flu over there in America, and by people dropping by the thousands, and what are they? Maybe if we had the same measures, we wouldn't have the thing with the flu. I don't know.
Right.
But all I knew was yeah, they did. They reacted like severely and quickly, and the people listened. Is the big thing. The people
Right.
listened
Right.
because I think that's part of their. I chalk that up to their culture,
Of course.
that
Of course.
their the communists just listen to the government, that's it, they got it taken care of. And honestly, I think from what I've seen, the months I've been there, I haven't been there my life or whatever, but they seem to think it's working for them.
Right.
So, as far as their political stuff, but yeah, so many differences, so many humorous so many humorous questions I've been asked and had to answer, and vice versa with them. They have such an odd view of America and Americans. And they when they'll come, they see me and they kind of act in awe sometimes, depending, not some of the kids or something, but I've been asked, so does the government give you a house when you have a baby?
Wow.
No. They
Wow.
think they think we're like, walking on marshmallows here, just, when we have a baby, the government gives us a house. Everyone here has mansions. These are things that I have been asked. Does everyone there have a mansion? um you know it's nuts. And I actually brought up to one of my older classes, there was a lesson on stereotypes, and I asked them, I tried to be as open as possible with them, and ask them, what are some stereotypes about Americans that you hear, or what's something about America that you want to ask me. I've always asked them. I've always told them to be open with me if they want to ask me any question about America or Americans. I'm there. Um, but they that those are the questions I get asked. um, I think they just think we're all super rich and happy and all of that, and I'm having to break it to them that I was like, no, I'm here because I can't afford to live in America. And I tell them how we compare prices all the time. I'll buy something and they're like, oh, you're rich. They'll tell me I'm rich. They talk about money very openly there. um and I'm like, it's just about how much it would be in America, and they're like, I can't live there. I
Yeah.
can't live there. I feel like the commoners, there, the normal red Chinese people, whatever, the ones that I've come across seem to think that we are all very well off, um, which
Yeah.
is fun to me.
It
It's
is.
just, it's
It's
fun. And I try not to laugh at them because I don't want them to think I'm laughing at,
right.
you
Right.
know, but it's
Yeah.
so I have to like, no, we don't get, yeah. I don't want to laugh at them, but
There's a
yeah,
way, it's almost like a
the
childlike
difference
treatment.
is what we think, what we're told about Chinese people and what Chinese people are told about us is so different. They're just us. They're just us. They're just humans in another part of the world. That's
Yeah,
all.
totally with you.
They have
So
the
when
same concerns and fears and happinesses and joys and all of that. So, um, yeah, it's just the same. We're all the same.
you got ready to leave, it was a little bit of a trick to get out, right? Because I mean, I assume a lot of people were trying to leave at once. And did any of your expats go with you? Did like what happened in that scenario?
No, I actually, it, my leaving China for the second time is what you're talking about. I'm assuming the leaving to come here for the
Yeah, that's
virus,
it.
correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah. I actually lucked out. I don't know how to explain it, but I was hearing that they were shutting flights, shutting flights, shutting flights. I decided to get out of Dodge, so I hopped on Google and looked at Google Flights. A friend of mine, actually right before I hopped on, a friend of mine who was in San Francisco at the time said, "We're in San Francisco. If you can find something here, come here, and then I'll at least get you here, and then you can figure out your flight to New Orleans from there." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Well, now I have some options." I went on and no options to New Orleans, but I found a flight immediately, a flight from Shanghai to Taiwan to San Francisco for a really good price, or an average price, I guess. And but it was that day. In 3 hours, I was headed to the train station because I just hopped on that opportunity and just booked it, hopped on the opportunity, left. So within 3 hours, I was looking at, I booked my flight and then left and was on the train station wearing a mask, ready to come home. And I was um, so focused on coming here and not being stopped, not being stopped, in Taiwan, not being allowed to get on the plane or not being allowed to board the plane, in Shanghai or something. I just wanted it to happen as soon as possible. So I was just go, go, go. Like I said, fight or flight was full force, and got on the plane in Taiwan, got to Shanghai, got on the plane in Taiwan, landed in San Francisco. Had a little, I had to stay in San Francisco airport holding area for a bit while they checked my temperature and asked me a few questions about, being in China and how long I had been in and all of that stuff. And, then I was let go. And then I stayed with my friend for a few days in San Francisco and found a flight here that was, reasonably priced. Got here and then got to New Orleans, and I actually had to get to Alabama. So I took a night bus, a Greyhound bus, from New Orleans to Mobile that I found that was running. And my niece picked me up from the Mobile Greyhound station at like 12:30 at night and brought me here. And I've been here ever since.
I
No
imagine
car.
that I imagine that 12:30 a.m. pickup at the Greyhound station here was maybe one of the scariest parts of that entire journey. Fair to say?
More annoying than scary.
Yeah, got it.
I would
Got it.
More annoying. I don't
No.
get scared easily. And I was just more annoyed.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just such a weird spot. So let's talk a little bit about like going forward. So what is your process? Uh, and because fair to say you're headed back tomorrow, no, day after tomorrow.
Monday.
In this world, Monday, yeah. In this world, whenever this airs, it might be different. You're already there, hopefully already through quarantine or whatever. But what is the process about going back? What is that decision like in your brain when you start thinking about it? How does that work out for you?
My immediate thought was, I'm not going back. That was my immediate thought. I was against it. I started panicking. I have anxiety issues, and it just flared those up. So I'd say for about half a day when my boss, because at first it was, I was insistent on, I want a date that the school is open before I come back. Because I don't want to go back, go through quarantine, and then just be stuck there, not able to do it. That was one thing I was avoiding when I was, coming here, was not being, stuck at home in quarantine in China. So, my first thought when my boss texted me and she was like, "Hey, Lyndy, when are you coming back? They're saying the schools are probably going to reopen in mid-April, and I'm worried you're going to be stuck there. That flights are going to be shut down in America, and blah blah blah, since it's flaring up there." And my thought was, "Where's that date I was looking for? I don't know. I want a date." Kind of hiding behind that. Um, and then it just kind of, I thought about it. My first, like I said, I was no, 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 and then I really had my gut. I think my gut started, talking, and I started thinking about why I went in the first place, and why I was sad to leave, why I was upset to be here when I first got back to America. I haven't told anybody this, but like when I first got back to America after being in China, after fleeing, I was looking back, making sure everything was going to happen. When I got back to America, it was like being let out of a tornado, and I had no plans. I hadn't realized that I had to kind of prepare myself to come back and unlearn all that I had learned to live in China, all that culture shock I went through, everything from little to very big things that I was going through. I had my own culture shock coming back. Um, and, I just kind of had to think about and assess all that I've been through, not just what I want to do now, but what I've been through to get to this point and what it's worth to me, what all that I've been through is worth to me. And do I want to give up now? Because that's how I would have felt, that I would have felt I was giving up on this, the most, the most major life changing undertaking I have ever, um, the most that I've ever tried to accomplish or, succeed at or whatever. Um, did I want to give that up? Because I mean, if I didn't go back to China, they would have to refill, they would have to fill my position. I would lose my position. And yeah, I can get a job at another school or, or something, or another country or something, but I want my school, I want my country. That's what's been working for me so well. Is the people I'm around, my kids. I love my kids, my students. I miss them. I was listening to their homework assignments. They have to tell us things in English, say words in English for their homework assignments. I spent the first few days I was in America going back to old homework assignments, listening to my kids' voices because I miss them so much. Um, do I want to give that up, or do I want to suffer through a little more crap? Um, get that experience, learn things that get the experience that other people won't get, and learn things, learn lessons, and maybe get ideas. I don't know. Everything that happens to me, I try to turn it into a lesson and into um just something to learn from, good, bad, whatever. I don't, it's just a way that I've moved through life, and I didn't want to regret not going back. I didn't want to regret giving up my life. I didn't want to give up my life. And as soon as I had that idea that I would be giving up my life that I've loved for the last few months, I'm not done yet over there. It's not, I don't plan on living there the rest of my life. Who knows? But I'm not done yet. So I just decided, that was when I decided that, I'm going to do what it takes. Other people are going through it. I can do it too. I've been through worse. I can document it. I can share it with, my friends, my people who have been sharing my journey so far. This is going to be part of it. And, I'm happy to share it. Sharing helps. I'm sure you understand, sharing things, it helps you process. And, of course, other people's opinions and advice is always helpful, but, I just do it to stay connected. And I'll continue to do that because it helps me. It helps other people seem to be helped by it and enjoy it. I know that they show it to their kids. Um, and I want to continue to be able to do that and to do it in the place that I know makes me happy. And that's not common for me to be in that position. And so I'm going to fight for that. That's what I'm doing.
I got to tell you, like just listening to that piece, I switched off a 2-shot so I could wipe a couple of tears away. I mean, seriously, uh, like that's so like I think if anything from this, like we can talk about the conversation about any of the other stuff, but the fact is that that moment where you just told us like, hey, I came back, I realized that I missed that more, is one of the most beautiful things I've heard throughout this entire scenario of anybody's stories of whatever we're dealing with as a global pandemic, is the fact that it's just a reminder that not only does life keep going, but there are people that have literally dedicated themselves. You've dedicated yourselves as a kids in a foreign country because you care about them. That's so freaking beautiful and so rare to get in the world when our Facebook feeds and other crap are just clogged up with negativity and political crap. The fact that you can make that statement and make it with conviction, seriously, like I could sit here and cry a little bit, not going to think about puppies or something else, but like straight up, that's emotionally resonating. I'm not just being obsequious, like truly mean that. Hands down, beautiful thing, truly.
Well, thank you, I guess. I just, it's just what I feel. I mean, I appreciate that. But that's how I think, and I think you know what, honestly, I think that's how more people think than than we realize, than we hear and see. You know, I have a little bit more it's funny, as pissed off as some people are getting um at, you know, what people are saying on Facebook and everything, I just don't let it get to me that much, because I've seen and this is part of the, you know, what makes it so wonderful, and one of the reasons that you know, one of the reasons I wanted to live in another country and stuff is I've seen another perspective. I've seen people coming together and, um, you know, and really rallying for their community and doing what's necessary. I know that we're capable of that. Um, and it's not just, you know, I know that those people aren't just in China. Those people are here too. They're just not being as vocal about it as maybe they should be. Um, you know, people, we're better than we think we are. I think we have to have a little more faith in each other. Um, you know, I think that I really do believe that, you know, yeah, other people are going to be too selfish and they're going to hoard, and other people are going to not listen to directions. Um, let them be those people, try to educate them. Um, but don't let it fester in your everyday attitude about humanity and what people are and what people are capable of and can be, because there are so many people in this world more than what we see on Facebook and on social media. And I just choose not to focus on the negativity, the greed, um, you know, the lies, the fear mongering, all of that.
Right.
Just, you know, be pragmatic. Listen to educated suggestions, and, you know, take care of each other. Um, I don't, you know, I really just, I have too much to deal with to get upset with other people's opinions. And that's all it is. It's just other people's opinions.
No, you're spot on. I just think
I've
it was just a nice moment. Like for me, it's just I love having those kind of. That's why I think this stuff is important. Having different perspectives and voices. Certainly, somewhere down the road, doesn't matter. The pandemic could be far over, but somebody could get this, and I guarantee you, it's going to resonate. If it resonated with one, it'll resonate with many, and then all of a sudden, we've helped that many people. That's a beautiful thing. So I thank you for kind of contributing that. I have one last kind of one or two, but this primary last question. You leave soon. What does that travel situation look like? Is it crazy chaos, or do you think it's a little more, because it seemed like some post I read, you kind of had some organization, like your expats were helping you. What's going on with the travel back over there? Like,
Yeah, well, it's not chaos. It's very organized. It seems like I, from what I'm reading, they seem to be doing a tremendous job considering the volume that they're having to deal with. But and by they, I'm talking about Shanghai Pudong International Airport, which is where I'm going to be flying in. So that's the one that I'm watching. Um, I'm going to be flying, I'm taking off on Monday. I'm going to be flying from New Orleans to LAX to Taiwan to Shanghai. And I'm kind of starting to look at Taiwan as well, because I don't know what airlines are doing in regards to, I mean, are they just going to let us, oh, they're off to China, just go? But I'm thinking if people are coming from LAX going to Taiwan, they're going to take these measures as well. And from what I understand from the expat community, the measures they are taking are as follows. We land in Shanghai. A few people in hazmat suits board the plane. They call out names. I think those are what I assume are those are names of people who are coming from high risk countries. I think I will be one of those names. Um, they're going to they take those people off. They take them out in groups of 3 to 5 or whatever. When that is done, then they will say, okay, the rest of you can unboard. And then you go through certain medical checks. Of course, they take your temperature and all of that before you deplane and everything. From what I understand, I will then be taken off to a kind of a holding part of the airport where, and this is what I'm unclear of as far as where I'm going to do my quarantine. I'm definitely going to do a quarantine. It's whether or not it's going to be at home or in a hotel. And that is supposed to be according to the local government, the government where I reside, is going to advise us of that. From what I understand, though, if I choose to be tested for the virus at the airport, I am to wait there until the test, comes back. And they've been taking 12 to 16 hours to come back, I think. Um, and I'll be tested, and if it's negative, I might be able to go home. I'll have a ride home um, to do my quarantine there. Otherwise, if I either test positive or if someone on my plane tested positive, or someone in my holding area tested positive, something like that, or if I'm showing symptoms, then I'll definitely have to be put in hotel quarantine. All the travel is arranged, the tests are free. Once I get off the plane, I mean, I'm going to have people just telling me where to go. But my boss is informed, the local government, I had to give 7 days notice
Oh, wow.
to the local government that I was coming in.
Okay.
So they could, I guess, make sure I have room in a hotel and all of that. But they are very, very strategic and very organized there. The only thing that makes it maybe seem disorganized is the delay because of so many people coming in and the crowds and how many people they're having to test and how many people, waiting for rides to and from different hotels and all of that. Um, it's a mess, but that part's a mess, but they've organized it as much as possible and they have a coding system in China. Um, Once I get through quarantine, I'll still
Right.
be, you know, uh, subject to that. Every Chinese citizen is subject to their coding system, red, yellow, green, all of that. So, as far as what to expect after I get out of quarantine, I'm expecting, it to be a little better than what it was when I left. I think they still take temperatures there, um, and they check your code. And I think that's it. I think everything else, businesses are starting to run, restaurants are back up. They're starting to talk about school coming back in at some point. Um, it's
Because
just
they
getting interesting.
oh yeah, do they go year round in China?
No,
Okay.
no, they don't go year round. They do have about 2 months off in the summer,
Okay.
but what happens with, Chinese students, they go to school at like we go to school, but then they also have extra classes.
Got it.
They do extracurricular classes, English classes, math, karate. I mean, all of that, all their extracurricular stuff is still done during the summer and on weekends. So they still have to go to classes during the summer, but it's not school.
Got it. What about like in terms of and this will be the last one. In terms of being around here, did you find yourself like, all right, you land back in, did you like jack your precautions even higher? Like, okay, I'm on super personal lockdown 3000 now, or like what did you do in terms of getting ready to make that journey back?
Oh, to make the journey back?
Or just in
What?
general, like once you got here, I mean, New Orleans has a few, because the people, it's spreading in the U.S. fairly quickly. It just
Yeah, well, I got here a month and a half ago. So I got here at a time way before all of these measures were taken. When I got here, it was like coming from a sick area to a non-sick area. When I got, I went from, China where 100% of the people were wearing masks without question. You're being checked for temperatures everywhere. You were, I mean, it was stressful and people were looking at you and all. But then when I got here, it's like mask. Nobody was wearing a mask. It was business as usual here when I got here. And I've been sheltered at my sister's house here in Grand Bay ever since. Really, I mean, we go to the store and stuff, but I haven't been out and about in the last month and a half. So um yeah, when I got here in America, it was business as usual. Stark comparison to the way it was, how I left China. And now I'm leaving America kind of in the same.
Yeah, it's
Kind of a
funny. It's like
where nobody's wearing masks.
right, you're going back, right, where you can go back to that normalcy again. It's kind of fascinating if you look at it. And look, it's all cyclical. We'll see what happens on that side. So what
Well,
I'd
who
love to
knows?
do.
It might do this, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It might
Yeah.
surge back up in China after a while. I don't know. I'm not a medical professional.
I'm not either, and I'm not going to pretend to play one, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn last night. So I can't even use that joke to give me equality. All right, so that's it. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, and we'll answer them best we can. And just look out for our live broadcast. We did this one not live, but a lot of times we try and go live, so it's more raw, more organic, more on the cusp. But whenever we have a chance to have that conversation, join us. If you're not listening, or if maybe you are listening right now onto the podcast version called Either Way, you're always welcome to listen to that. Or you're watching on YouTube or potentially Facebook. There's a podcast version. It's audio only, no pictures, no faces, just listening to the sounds. That's available as well if you'd like to check it out. Thank you for hanging out once again. And please, please, please be safe, be well. God bless, Godspeed. Good luck.